Recently, an individual by the name of Dan Olson put together one of the better produced justifications for the anti-Gamergate elements. Dan presents the idea of base assumptions that he asserts lead to incorrect conclusions by the Gamergate community. These were: there are no problems with inclusion or representation in gaming. Any problems that do exist don't matter because it is the result of the free market appealing to the majority of players. The status quo is a natural state, thus any disruption is inherently artificial. While many in the Gamergate community would immediately turn solely to the topic of journalism ethics, I am willing to confront the accusations of intolerance within the community because ultimately I feel it is a bridge that must at some point be crossed. Although the numerous women and minority representatives of Not Your Shield ought to serve as an example of your obvious miscalculation alone. Surprisingly enough, I don't have any serious problem with the framework lined out here, except Part 3, regarding disruption. Criticism and disruption are a natural part of truly free markets. In a free market you are free to distort the free market as far as your dollar will carry you. Where the line is drawn, however, is when the interaction with the market ceases to be constructive criticism and the development of new products through voluntary interactions with the market, but destructive actions taken through coercion or violence. The threat posed by the corrupt gaming press and insertion of leftist political agenda into the gaming industry was not one of voluntary interaction with the market, seeking to create new evolutions of gaming reflecting the demographics' tastes, but a coercive threat aimed at game publishers, one that sought to freeze out publishers who refused to bow to their political and cultural pressure, and reward those who did play ball with favorable reviews. The political left sought to influence the market, not by the voluntary influence of their purchasing power, but by attempting to play gatekeeper through the gaming media, spread lies, impose censorship, and in doing so have a much greater influence upon the market than they could through their purchasing power alone. It only takes a cursory glance through history to know that the political left is not an avid supporter of the free market. Their ideology justifies leaving the realm of peaceful interaction through the marketplace, and instead deploying violent, non-voluntary force in order to dictate the terms not only for themselves, but the entire society. The radical left believes in a societal and academic elite that should control all activities to fall in line with their personally held philosophy and rejects any dissent. Their willingness to act in a coercive manner stems from their own belief in their group superiority, both morally and intellectually, but also a deep-seated fear that, in a free marketplace of ideas, they would never gain the superiority they seek over others. Not everyone will ever bow to their pressure and abject authority by suggestion alone, so they justify the use of corrupt and violent means in order to achieve their narrow vision of social justice. Their opposition is vilified into subhuman caricatures, deserving of whatever foul treatment their movement can subject them to. Dan then goes on to vilify those who rose up to resist such coercive tactics, by painting the entire Gamergate movement with a broad brush of the most extreme elements claimed to be present. He mocks calls for evidence when claims of serious threats are reported, or when any points of contention are debated, ignoring that generally these threats are investigated then dismissed as non-credible by authorities. By the time such announcements are made, the threats have been exploited for all they are worth through their liberal media outlets, taking uncorroborated personal accounts at face value and running with the story, while rarely if ever presenting an opposing point of view. He also entirely ignores the rampant use of harassment and doxing as tactics amongst those aligned against Gamergate. The truth of the matter is the entire situation has escalated on both sides. With the numbers of supporters as large as they are, it would be more surprising if there were no radical elements on either side acting in an inappropriate manner. However, Dan Olson and the anti-Gamergate elements at large seem to be in complete denial of this mathematical truth, instead insisting these elements are representative of the whole of their opposition, while denying the blatant and numerous examples of inappropriate activity among their own ranks. Ultimately, the anti-Gamergate elements have their own base assumptions. A staunch belief in their own innate moral superiority. Their belief system must be imposed onto society at large. Violent, coercive, and corrupt methods of behavior are permissible, so long as they further the collective's goals. The differences between the two factions could not be more clear. Gamergate elements embrace a gaming industry that caters to multiple interests and points of view within the community. It realizes the world is a big place, with room enough for narratives that cater to the whims of a wide variety of players within the marketplace. It however rejects attempts to influence the community and developers through coercion, corruption, and threats of violence, accepting the marketplace as the ultimate arbiter of what is popular, what is niche, and what falls by the wayside. It is not a community that asks players to leave their identity at the door, as Dan suggests, but one that expects players to play the game without any expectation of special treatment, or to play something else, without seeking to destroy aesthetic aspects of games other players enjoy. In other words, your rights end where the rights of others begin. Your personal preferences are not magic hats you can don that allow you to conform the gaming industry solely to your personal vision. Your voice is only one among the chorus, your dollars only as green as the gamers' dollars you despise. You can have your say, but you can't have control. You can give criticism, but cannot expect to be free from it, or deflect it merely as misogyny or falsely equate it with harassment as is so often the case. Ultimately, the world and the gaming industry will never be dictated to by your narrow ideological tenets. Your attempts at underhanded influence will be spotted and thwarted, and ultimately only harm whatever merits your positions may have had to begin with. In the end, one has to question if social justice is even a real concern for those involved at the core of anti-Gamergate activities. Wherever a movement justifies itself by saying the ends justify the means, they attract the worst sorts of people into their ranks, who are willing to carry out this sort of unethical behavior, while wearing the cause as a mask to maintain acceptance within a group identity. If you want someone to do something, tell them what's in it for them, not what's in it for you. Cooperate, don't dictate, and if you can't get along, pick a spot and play. There is no need for the gaming industry to ever be united under any single ideology, preference, or point of view. Thank you for listening to this message.